Bella, who every week deliver beautiful weather and an incredible technological setup. So today we're going to be talking with Q&A Tarush Aggarwal. Tarush. There you go. Oh, that was a good one, wasn't it? Just to get you involved, to bring you in early. Yeah, funny. So before we get there, what I say every week, just to let you know, so every Monday, 7 o'clock, we start here in the garden at Tropical Nomad. So you can, if you're in Bali, come and join us in the studio audience, right? Each week it kind of grows. It's really cool. And you get to interact with what we're doing here, which is really fun. And you get to ask questions and see what goes on behind the scenes. And it's very exciting, the behind the scenes. Very exciting. So feel free to come and join us or catch us online. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as well. So YouTube, we're on Rob Ian Bonnick. We're also YouTube with Tropical Nomad. Now, SpeakuP Monday, if you haven't known what it is before, we started about 75 weeks ago, and SpeakuP Monday is basically a platform for inspiration using a Q&A platform as a way to tease out, to bring out some really inspirational information, but also the real deal. It's not just I came up with a word last week, which I'm not going to repeat, which everyone was laughing at, but so I'm not going to repeat that word. It's too funny. But basically, we go a little bit deeper than your average Q&A, right? Because we really want to know what makes our guest tick, right? And how they're able to overcome problems, challenges, and all the rest of that, the things that we really need to and want to know, as opposed to just kind of putting hot air up the butt of how amazing they are, because they're all amazing, right? So that's what we do, almost coming to Tarush. And finally, if you think that you'd love to be on SpeakuP Monday, feel free to contact me via Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, you can get to me, and we can set it up and get you on to the show, and that will be as soon as we can do it. All right. So that's that part of it done with the preamble. So now let's get on to Tarush. So Tarush, welcome to the show, mate. Welcome to the show, SpeakuP Monday.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, guys. And thank you so much for having me, Rob. And I'm looking forward to adding value to you guys. So let me know how I can help.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, man. So look, let's get started. So, we've met a couple of times, briefly, but, I love the person who you are. You give me a great energy. You always have. And you're taller than I thought you were. That cracked me up. But part of what this is about is it's not only everybody who's live or looking through one of the social medias to get to know you. I love to get to know you as well, right? So this is the perspective from where we come. So we started off a little bit before during the preamble, but if you can let us know, like where you're from and what your life was like growing up. And the last thing is that, what do you think your life stands for? So where did you grow up, born, what life was like, and what is it you stand for?
So I grew up in India. I'm from Bombay. And I grew very fortunate to very early on in life know that technology is going to be a big part of my life. I grew up in a family. My mom had an e-commerce business. So I've always been in tech. And when I was 17, I ran away from home, moved to America, and then never really went back. So, here I am 12 years later, slowly getting closer to India. At least that's what my mom is hopeful for. And I came to Bali in Jan for a 10-day vacation. And I was living in China at that time. And, obviously got stuck over here. My trip kept getting pushed back. Every week I thought I'm going to have to go back. And after a while, I was just like, why, if I'm regretting and dreading going back to China, why don't I just move to Bali? So, here I am. That's that's a brief history of, India, America, New York, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Shanghai, and now Bali. So I'm trying to go around the world and, making my way back. What does my life stand for? I feel super fortunate that I think I know what my purpose is. I'm very, as I mentioned earlier, I figured out pretty early on that I'm very into technology, and more specifically data. So where I really get value is by helping other companies become data driven and sharing really what I have learned. So I think that's really my purpose, and that's what I'm very excited to sort of do.
Got it. Thank you, brother. And so let's go back. So now, as you mentioned, you're born in India. Now, how many of you, like siblings? What was life at home like? Who were the figures in your life, who stood out for you?
I mean, we're like 1.2 billion of us, so there are a whole lot of us. But I have a younger sister. We're a very close family. So my parents and my sister are still back home in India. And as I mentioned, my mom ran an e-commerce business. So she's pretty involved in my life, and we're a very close-knit family. So yeah, my family's been really influential and supportive in my life.
And your father, so what kind of character is your father, was your father?
My dad is, I'm super grateful for my family. They sacrificed a lot for me to be able to go abroad. So, very, very grateful, very simple people. It's funny, my dad is, me, my sister, my mom are pretty sort of Web 2.0 and tech people. And my dad is super bad at computers. He's always scared that we can see what he's watching. And I think
it's true.
That raises up questions on what he's watching, but also it just shows how like backwards he is with technology as a whole.
Love it. And so your mom with the e-commerce business. So what we talk about a lot in this show is that it's this connection we have to our environment, 0 to 7, 0 to 8, and the things we have in that environment that maybe either prompt us to move in a certain direction or move in the opposite direction. Right? So what in your environment, if there was anything, was moving you towards it? Obviously, you said your mum has got an e-commerce business, but what in particular do you think moved you in the direction of travel?
I think I was really trying to get away from India. Like, waking up every day and being part of a culture, and you watch TV and you watch American television shows and you want to live in California. So, I always grew up wanting that lifestyle and wanting to live away from India. And, I think that's really what helped me move away. And yeah, I can look back now and reflect. In some way, I was really trying to run away. I wanted to do something else. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. So here it's not really about answering a question. Even though it's a Q&A, it's the question prompts something, and it's whatever comes up for you, feel free to share. And that's where the beauty is, actually, not always in answering a question perfectly. And so, if there were any experiences growing up for you that were defining moments, good or bad, perceptually, what comes to mind?
I feel very blessed that high school was really, really cool for us. We went to a high school which was a little bit like Harry Potter. We had 4 houses, and you would really live for your house, right? At the end of the year, one of the houses would win, and if you came late to school, you would lose a minus point, and your prefects and the head boy would get really mad. So that really, built a lot of sort of close relationships. And yeah, high school was really significant for me, and worked really hard in high school to sort of basically get into a good college in America. And yeah, very grateful for that. I think when I went to America, it was the opposite. Like, I finally had freedom, so I didn't really do anything in school. I didn't do anything in college besides copy homework and go party. But I was very lucky that I worked pretty hard in high school, so I was still able to use what I learned in high school to get by in college. So, Indian education system, India and China have a pretty solid education system, especially when it comes to math and science, and the sort of areas which I was naturally more inclined to. So, yeah, looking back at my childhood, it was, very happy childhood, very close family. I'm very fortunate that I look back with just positive memories. So apart from that, I was also very grateful that I did go to high school in India and I learned what I learned and had that opportunity to really connect at a young age, from 14 to 17, to have really close friends who are still sort of brothers and sisters today. That really comes alive when I think about sort of living in India and what that looked like.
And any religion that you followed at home?
That's a great question. So we're Hindu, and obviously Bali is a big Hindu island. For the most part, the religion my mom always preached was sort of do good, be good. So before a big exam or before a big day, we would sort of chant a small prayer. I went to an English Catholic school, so we would say the Lord's Prayer at school, and more Hindu stuff outside school. But for the most part, the religion which I continue to live till date is really sort of do good, be good. If you feel good from inside, you're probably on the right path. I recently saw something on LinkedIn where Gary Vaynerchuk is asked the question, and he's like, so this whole karma thing, right? Like, he's like, so are you telling me that if you're good to people and in return the universe is good to you, like that's like not obvious? Like, it's not karma, it's like more common sense. So that's what I really stand by, and that's what religion means to me.
Got it. And so two questions come up. So one is, so you mentioned the relationship with your sister is very close. And so what is it like now? What does she do? What kind of person is she? And does she want to get out of India?
She's probably watching, so this is perfect. We've always been very competitive, and she's always tried to copy me a little bit. So now that I'm in data, she wants to be in data, and it's enough reason for me to want to leave data. So it's more just cute sibling rivalry. Love my family dearly, very grateful for them. She works in strategy at a startup in India. She is the chief of staff to the CEO, and she's leading the analytics team, and she used to live in America, sort of like myself. She went there for college, but she's moved back, and she's more of a homebody, so she really enjoys being in India and sort of close to the family.
And are you proud of who you've become?
Yes, absolutely. I am. It's always there's so much more I want to do. I had a struggle, like, very honestly. Like, I lived in America and I didn't fit in. I was abusing alcohol and going out and successful on paper, good job and sort of good career, but sort of going out 5 nights a week and just not going out 5 nights a week and just not complete. And I got really lucky that nothing crashed in my life for me to have a spiritual awakening, if you may. And one day I just decided it's time to leave, and if I don't leave, bad things are gonna happen. And I moved to China. I had the opportunity to move with Wework to China, and who would have? I did that, and probably single-handedly the best decision I made for myself was that.
And so what I'm getting so far, and correct me, is that so you grew up in India. You're watching American TV. You had these dreams and desires that weren't necessarily Indian, right? To get out and go to the States, right? The land of opportunity, the land of can-do attitude. And you're like, right. And then somehow you decided that your way out could be doing data, right? E-commerce, or looking at that to be the future. You went to school. You had the upbringing Hindu, and it sounds like at home was a pleasurable experience, right? You had a bit of sibling rivalry with your sister who is copying you. She's watching now. Copy him, right? Don't copy him. You are your own person. And so then what happens now is that, so you've made your way to the States. You're not working anymore. You're copying people, right, in college. You've discovered alcohol, probably women. You're having a great time, right? And you're realizing eventually, look, if I don't start to make a move here, I'm going to end up in a bad way. So was there anything, and again, I could probably call it a defining moment. It doesn't necessarily need to be that for you, but were there a succession of things that led to that decision that you made to say, you know what, it needs to stop now?
Great question. So I went on a scuba diving trip in the Bahamas on this small dinghy liveaboard, and I met someone who was a high school flute teacher, and we started sort of chatting. And she has a daughter, and she was telling me about her career in tech, and she was a very early employee of HP, which is a huge company, and her and her husband did extremely well for themselves, and made it really big in life. And she was telling me that it was always they were part of the rat race. It's a sort of quintessential story of being part of the rat race. Sort of, it's never enough, and one day they decided this is it, so they bought a boat and massive yacht and went for a vacation and came back 15-20 years later. So I guess that was my eat, pray, love moment, and just decided at that point that if I continue doing what I'm doing, probably not going to be very happy. So at that point I decided to write a book, and I decided I'm going to take a sabbatical and go on a scuba diving trip for 1 year, go work in a small boat and go do that. And what the book was about is, it was a general primer for anyone interested in being data driven, like how to use data in your day-to-day life to make decisions, right? Like, I think when there are a lot of times when I see myself making decisions, and it comes from a very numbers perspective, and it just naturally, that's just how I do things. And I thought it'd be really cool to share that perspective with a lot of people. So that was the book I started to write. And at that point, what happened is, a really close friend of mine was being sent to China to go really jumpstart technology for Wework China. And one night he came to me, we were at a cocktail bar, and he was sort of talking about how he's sort of what he's going to do in China and how he's going to sort of get started. And he was asking my advice on data, and we started chatting, and 15-20 cocktails later we sort of decided that I'm going to go to China and help him do it. So that's how the plan of that put an end to my scuba diving for a year plan. But I look back really fondly on that experience, and that was a defining moment in my America chapter.
Like, so two questions come up, right? So one is, how do you use data to make a decision? Let's go with that one first. So give us an example of an insight into how you think.
So, most people, and I do this all the time too, but when you ask the question, you think forward, right? Like, based on what I know, what is the best way to answer this question? And you're making a calculated decision based on what you know. Another way to think of it is, in order to answer this question, what is the best data I can have in order to answer this question? So what you're really doing is working backwards. If being like, and this works in e-commerce too, right? Hey, should we use this marketing campaign or this marketing campaign? And based on the information we have, we're going to go with this one. And really the way I think about it, and a lot of people who do what I do think about it, is, in order to make the best decision, this is the data we would want to have. And when you think of it in that way, you change the entire way of looking at the problem, and that allows you to focus on what's the best way to then acquire that information to make a decision, instead of going a decision without getting the right data. So that's a very high level example.
That's a paradigm shifter for me, really. Like, it makes perfect sense, but I never got that before. How interesting. Wow. There's a thing called, this is Kai who introduced me to this one. Kai, if you're watching, Kai Jordan Coaching, awesome guy. It's called vertical and horizontal decision. Okay, so a horizontal decision is like when you're in the forest and you're stuck and you're trying to find your way out, like G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe was in the forest, and everywhere you look is horizontal, right? All you see are trees that look identical from every perspective you look at. It's like, which way is out? I've got no idea. And I'll go over here and try it. It's like, oh, I'm lost. So a horizontal decision is not having the data. A vertical decision is an analogy of G.I. Joe now in a helicopter, right? Lord knows how it happened. Maybe the helicopter drops a little ladder down and he's climbing up the ladder, climbing up. And he gets to have perspective and he sees the forest from this aerial view and says, I'm there and the way out is there. That's the way out. So then when he goes down, he goes in that direction no matter what, because he knows that's the way out. But he's got vertical thinking now. Yeah. Not horizontal. So that's the vertical thinking coming in. So what you just did for me personally, and I'm sure you did it for other people here as well, is that you gave us a vertical thinking model to look at how you approach life on so many different levels. That's brilliant. You know, what do I need? What data do I need to make the best decision possible? I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. It's super powerful. And I think, we're living in a world today where there's so much data available.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, or not 10, 15 years ago, sort of a small company called Facebook came up, right? And that was a big inflection point for the world. What happened with Facebook is, for the first time, your data, which would earlier live in your computer, you had Microsoft Word or you had software on your computer, that data started going to the cloud. And that changed the world, right? The sort of cloud became big. You started to have these frameworks which process data at scale. And what's happened in the last 10 years is you've started having tools on the internet which analyze your data for you. But it's no longer like 10 years ago where there's just one platform, which is Facebook, and that's got a lot of your data. There's Facebook and Google 15 years ago. Now you have 200 tools. And all of these tools have information of yours. So having some information in each of these tools is no longer a viable way to really know what's happening. So how do you collect the right information from each of these tools, analyze it yourself, and then use that to make the best decision possible? This is, I feel, the second inflection point where over the next 5 years, we're going to start to re-centralize data across all of these data sources on the internet to make the best possible decision. So I think we're entering a really exciting time just in the industry. And if we're able to do this, I think all of us are going to be able to make a lot smarter decisions in our personal lives, right? If you have data across your watch, which is getting your steps, and let's say the ring, which is giving you your sleep, and some other data source, and you can actually join that, then you can really get into causation. I did this and that caused this. And right now, the way we really live is just sort of guessing, right? I know that my heart rate is good today. What did I do yesterday which has allowed my heart rate to be better today? So I think this is the real paradigm shift which is happening in the world today. It's really interesting.
Thank you for. I love the way you view this. It's given me a different perspective, and I'm sure everybody else a way to look at this, which is really cool. That's what I love about this. We're changing paradigm and perception as we go. So there's two things that quickly stick up for me. So one is, so I get why data is important, part of it, and I get that when I look at you now, I get why it's a perfectly logical step for you to do it, right? But take us back. So why did you choose data, right? So what was it? If you can be quite specific, if you can think of it, what was it that made you choose data in the first? Because you're an intelligent guy, I can see that. You could have done lots of different things, but why this?
So that's a good question. I went to school in America for computer science, and I was super fortunate that I was able to get a job in Silicon Valley after college, and I moved to Silicon Valley at a company called Salesforce.com as a software engineer. And a dream for a lot of people in technology to sort of be in Silicon Valley at a company like Salesforce. And about 1 week in, I realized that this was the worst decision ever. I realized that being a software engineer was the end to my career before it even started. Because what software engineers do is, it's more like an art form. and they spend their entire life optimizing one small little thing, which is beautiful. And making Google 0.1 second faster is a huge deal, but they're really focused on small. They're really focused on a very micro lens of the world. And I realized that's not for me. I'm a big picture thinker. I've always liked strategy. I've always enjoyed more of the algorithms and how to do things. So, here I am, sort of fresh out of school in a company, and sort of knowing that, this is not for me. And, it's a classic case of just being at the right place at the right time. At that time, Salesforce didn't have any data team. And I met someone who was very interested in building, the first version of Salesforce data infrastructure. And I partnered with him and got to be the first data engineer of Salesforce at that time, and really building some of the frameworks which Salesforce uses to understand data across multiple customers. And build that, and really the rest is history, right? Like, that made perfect sense for me, and sort of have ridden that train since then. And that's how we really got into data. So just a classic case of the sort of right place at the right time.
So I've got two more questions, and then we'll come forward into the WeWork and all the rest of that. So you strike me as a guy, right, who you just had like a succession of great days. And I love the way you say that I'm extremely fortunate. So for me, a person who says that is very spiritually connected personally, because everything that you've said has never really come about, I did this, is that I'm very fortunate to have this opportunity. It's a different way of thinking, right? For me, it's a different way of thinking. And so is there anything, and go as deep as you want, but is there anything which you would consider as bad or upsetting or polarizing that's happened to you, whatever comes up? What happened and what did you do about it?
I made some really stupid decisions in my life, just like I'm assuming a lot of people. And really the way I choose to look at it is, sorry for not answering a question, but I wouldn't change a thing, right? Because if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't suffered with alcohol and abused it and taken my body many, many years, aged my body prematurely many years, I wouldn't be where I am today, and just being super grateful for life and this opportunity to live in Bali, and so blessed to be here. So yeah, I did a lot of dumb shit, and so happy I did it because now I know. So looking back, could have done things very differently, right? Like, but I did it the way I did, and not really. If I had to do it again, I'd probably do it the same way, just to be where I am right now, because I'm truly happy right now.
Got it. So this success mentality, right? So I had this conversation a couple of times today, actually, in the last 2 days, about success mentality. So one of them is this this concept or understanding that we create the measure for ourselves. We create the measure for ourselves. So what that means is this: the world can tell us certain things, right? So you'll be successful if you earn $1 million in a month. That's successful. If you're not earning $1 million a month, you're not successful. You'll be successful if you have a 3-year relationship or more with a guy, right? That's success, right? So we have these different ideas of what success is. Usually what the world is telling us is success. And so for some of us, it's a case of saying, my personal definition of success is, for example, the fact that no matter whatever I'm doing, I give it 100%, no matter what it is. And even if I'm not, that's my lesson, right? So for me to be and to feel successful is relatively easy, and it keeps me inspired, right? Whereas other people are like, well, if I don't live up to these expectations which have been set from an outside force, personal, blah, 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 then I've been a failure, and that allows me to take myself down. Don't get me wrong, some people are motivated by failure as well, right? But it comes back to our definition of what success is, which can propel us to keep on going, or puts in a place where it's like, that's it, I'm done. And by the way, my definition of failure is if I give up completely. If I give up completely, that is my definition of failure, and I'm done, right? So for you, is there any set point about what success is for you, and what comes up for you when I say that?
That's a great question. I got really into Joe Dispenza in the last 1 year, really, right? And you know what I heard you say is that in the Newtonian way of thinking, you get something and then you feel a certain way. I'll be happy when I make $1 million, or you have something which happens, which then changes your emotion. And exactly what you said, right? The sort of quantum way of thinking is you start imagining that future has already happened and you start feeling it. And what you're doing is you're sending out an electromagnetic signal. The thought is sending out the electric signal, and when you start feeling that emotion, that's the magnetic signal being pulled back as an antenna. And when you subscribe to this world, you are really choosing your future, and you start, even if it doesn't happen, you're really living in that future. So yeah, that's really how I think about where I am right now. And the other side of entrepreneurship and moving to Bali is no longer working at Wework, right? No longer have that steady paycheck, and choosing to really believe in the unknown of this is the worst time ever to not have a job, yet having faith that, I'm very grateful for what happened, but I want something else in life, and I'm going to trust in the unknown and believe that, I have a vision of the future I'm trying to create for myself, and trying to feel what that feels like before it's happening. And it's been 6 months since I made that decision, and right now, like, it's very easy for me to come and talk with you guys because I'm genuinely like very happy, sort of very content with where I am. And it's starting to come true for me. I can see how that vision of the future is starting to become my reality, so it just reinforces my belief in it even more and more and more. And yeah, very, very excited for that.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate the openness, right, with which you're answering the question. And so this faith is not religious necessarily. You're saying that this faith is based upon a feeling that you create in your body in relation to the kind of future that you would like for yourself. And then you're talking about what you might call, I don't know, do you call it God? Do you call it the universe? Do you call it the ultimate intelligence, which is carrying that opportunity back to you to grasp and take to experience for real that feeling? And is that how you describe, or you describe it in a different way?
Yeah, for me, religion is, I believe in God. I grew up Hindu. I've lived in America. Been all over. So I do a little small thing from like every religion. So for me, religion is really, again, do good, be good. So I believe in a higher force, and I believe that there's something out there which is really governing us. So yeah, I think to answer your question is, I believe in karma, and doing good, being good serves. It's more about that feel good factor, right? Like if something feels right, you sort of gut feelings come from somewhere, right? Like you feel it in your gut, you want to do something. And I think that's the infinite wisdom of the universe really coming back and sort of guiding you, that that this is the right thing to do or this is the wrong thing to do.
And when did you start feeling this?
I think really, if I look back at my life and career, right, sort of New York and living in America I was not very connected with myself, and I had to move to China. I really looked at that as a transitional phase where really spent 1 year rebuilding who I am, and focusing on wellness and getting more connected with who I am, and then got to come to Bali where everything started to accelerate. So sort of really being here for the last 9 months, all of this connection is really accelerated. And I know many people have the same story, right? Moving to this place, like I've heard so many people say that you either get pulled in or you get spat right out, and kind of makes sense, right? It's a volcanic island, right? High energy, and if you're looking for change and you come over here, you're probably gonna find it. So I believe that everyone over here is going through a similar journey as I am.
And how for you, maybe a utopian view, so how for you can data, right, change the world for a positive?
So even though my job has been using data to extract value, data is never gonna, I don't want it to replace someone thinking for themselves. Like, I'm probably like a walking talking computer with the number of like sensors and devices I have on me, but it's always it's validating my intuition, right? It's like I want to feel something and then I can look at the data and say, what, this is really helping. So I subscribe to this model of the world where we're entering a world where you're going to focus on everything you want to focus on, and everything you don't want to focus on will be automated. So I'll give you an example, right? Imagine living in a world where as your data starts to get centralized across from every one of these data sources, if you book a flight ticket, your house automatically gets put on Airbnb, and when you're not home, then then this AI knows how to call the sort of cleaners to come clean the house. And when it's tax season, it sends an automatic email to your accountant with all your data so they can start prepping your taxes. And if you're running behind on your credit card bill, your house is automatically going to put your thermostat a few degrees higher so you start saving money and recommending restaurants which are a little bit cheaper for you. So AI is not living your life for you, but it's doing everything you don't want to do. Imagine living a life where you can truly decide to like go spend a week in sort of Portugal, and this AI is going to enable you to do that, and you don't have to think about that chore or that task which you had to do tomorrow. So here's kind of how I view data living in the modern world today. It's a tool which buys us convenience. It allows us to validate thoughts which we're already having. But if you use data purely to run and live your life, I don't think that's very fulfilling.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And so I'm laughing now, right? So earlier on, Brother Paul over there, my Scottish brother, London, right? My man, good to see you. So I knew nothing about Wework. I think I heard about it, and then Paul was telling me, Rob, mate, you don't know who Wework is? Seriously? And probably the guy's looking at here saying, like, you don't know who Wework is? Seriously? But I didn't. So for those of you, maybe the few people out there who, like me, don't know what Wework is, can you explain a little bit what Wework is and what they're worth? Because I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah, so, Wework, if you look at the world, right, and you look at how technology has transformed every single industry. So you want to book a car, you open your phone and you can book it. Whatever you want to do, right, it's very, very accessible through technology. What technology has done is it's eaten any inefficient process in the world and made it efficient. If you look at real estate, right, it's one of the last areas which wasn't efficient. If you wanted a desk and you wanted to go work somewhere, you show up, you have to sign a 5-year lease, you have to get an architect to go build it out and operate it and maintain it. Wework was an attempt at being able to open your phone and saying that, hey, I want a desk, I have a 5-person company, and next month I might be 7. Be super flexible, show up to a space where everything is taken care for you so that you can focus on what you want to be doing as a business and not have to worry about anything else. So that's fundamentally what Wework stood for, is this community of people who subscribe to living in a new way where you can do what you love and make a life, not just a living, which is very sort of Wework slogan. So I'm clearly still a big fan.
Now, this blew my mind. So how much did Wework raise capital?
I'm not a numbers person. No, I'm just kidding. We've raised a lot of money. I think, I don't want to sort of go on air and publicly. I'm not sure what the exact amount is. Billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Billions, okay.
I think.
Yeah. That's just enough. So I raised a lot of money because I don't want to put you in any danger. All right. So look, we've got a few questions. By the way, those of you who are here now, if you have any questions, just think about what those questions would be, and I'll come back to you in a couple of minutes. Okay. So we're kind of moving on to the external Q&A. So I've been handed these questions. These questions are not from me, man. All right. They're handed to me from the beautiful Bella. I didn't do these. Itchy. Don't blame Itchy Bella. They came from Bella. All right. What's that? It's from somebody else who's in the audience who wants.
Thanks, Paul.
who will remain nameless up until that point. So why did Wework fail? In your opinion?
Pass.
Pass.
Look, I'm not qualified to answer that question. I'm no financial analyst. I'm speaking as an employee of Wework, as an ex-employee of Wework. Wework stood for a lot of amazing things, and working at Wework when I did was probably one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. I think in some ways it was a little bit of being unlucky. You know, we were very ambitious, and very rightly so, as every time we set up with a new goal, we were able to hit it. So over a period of time, over years and years, our goals became more and more ambitious and more audacious. And I don't think there was one wrong decision which happened. A few series of events happened collectively. And from the way I see it is, the public markets, when we decided to go IPO, did not have enough faith in us. And Wework is a pretty capital intensive business, which requires a lot of upfront costs to open these buildings. So when you start to run out of money in a business type like this, it causes a lot of problems. And I think that's what happened. Exactly what decisions led to that, it's all very debatable. Rumor has it that they're making a movie and a TV series on this, so I think that might be a good place to start. But
very, very well answered, mate. Very well answered. We're going to give you one more of those, which I'll adjust it slightly. So, in an ideal world, right? Would you, or how would you adjust the model of Wework for Bali and Asia in general, knowing you've been here for 9 months now?
That's a great question. I'm very bullish on co-working. I'm very bullish on building communities. The reason I love this sort of series, and big congratulations, Rob, for having sort of 70 plus episodes. So round of applause. I'm very bullish on community, and the idea of co-working and co-living makes a lot of sense. Wework's model was fundamentally building 1,000-person offices. So they were building this in cities with with a population of more than 1 million people, with the idea that you're getting together freelancers and SMB businesses and enterprise companies to all be in the same room. So creating a very diverse crowd. So you have a freelancer who's offering a service, and there's someone else in that building who needs that service, so people can do business together. And then we are able to know what events are people interested in, so we can bring in the best speakers and really build this community. And we know which people can be introduced together. We had people called community managers who were facilitating connections. So I think the Wework model worked at scale in building community, and that's why it was more successful than any other co-working space in history, right? You know, at one point it was probably bigger than all of the other spaces combined. And I think that was the magic sauce, right? It was the community aspect to it. When, you know, in a city like Bali where you don't have those numbers, and predominantly most of the business over here is freelance, I wouldn't really subscribe to the Wework model per se. I think, again, very bullish on co-working and co-living, but I would take the elements of community from Wework, and that idea that you can have people which try and bring other people together, what Wework used to call community managers, and really drive and really go with that. But more of the model of like more flexible workspaces, exactly like the one we're in. sort of bullish on that, along with the added the sort of one thing I would add is having multiple locations, because that becomes really powerful, right? What WeWork was, one of the really attractive things about the WeWork model is you could be paying for an office in New York and you show up in Amsterdam and you have access to a conference room in 5 seconds, right? Imagine having access to a desk in any city which you land. Super powerful. So I love the idea of, instead of paying for a 5-person office at a particular zip code, you have access to space anywhere. So, I think if you were to take that model and apply it to Bali, where you now have access to space anywhere in Bali, especially with the internet being so bad over here, just the basic services.
But do you not think you could be the Gojek of WeWork for yourself? No, Gojek, WeWork.
The Gojek of WeWork?
Yeah.
I mean, the Gojek model is based on individuals or sort of contractors using a platform.
In terms of Indonesia is a very rich. Indonesia is a very rich culture of very artistic people. Very by 2030, I think Indonesia will be the second or third most digital focused nation in the world. I think there's a model for that, combining Gojek with. I know Gojek. I've tried to do that model of WeWork. They've tried to play around with it in Jakarta. Have you seen that?
I have not. No.
Go work, is that it? Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Paul. Appreciate it, mate. So, Itchy. So if we can give the microphone to my man over here, yeah. So remember, with this one, just point that microphone towards your mouth and ask your question.
Yes, the question what you said earlier, you said you want to leverage data in order to make better decisions, right? So you have your end goal in mind, and then you use data to make that come through. However, I feel it's often the other way around currently, that we are not empowered by data, but more enslaved in a way, because no one wakes up thinking, I'm going to spend 4 hours on my phone today. I think 50% of us do. And there's multiple examples of that. So how do we take back control of data? How can we help it? Make it help us instead of actually,
I mean, I think what you're talking about is super valid. I think what the question was is, in many ways, a lot of people feel enslaved by data. A prime example of that is how much time you spend on Instagram. I think what this is people who are very, very good at data finding ways to give you instant gratification and releasing dopamine in your brain. So because they work backwards and figured out what can we show someone so that they will be addicted to the platform. And what they've done is, again, use that same type of thinking, which I was just talking about earlier, to enslave you to your phones. And the solution to that, and you don't need me to say it, and you don't need me for this, is delete Instagram from your phone.
Yeah. I mean, there's for those who haven't seen, it's called The Social Dilemma. Is a documentary on Netflix, which I think goes into that pretty well. And a guy which I follow a little bit, a guy called Chamath Palihapitiya, right? One of the guys, one of the original guys of Facebook. He's a billionaire now, but he's got the social capital, I think the name of his company. Incredible guy from my limited knowledge. But I think that's a really important point that you brought up there, about how can we move forward as a nation and as a population and not feel as though we're being enslaved or being sold by the highest bidder to someone who wants to pay the highest money, right? So then how can we do that is probably another question, in your opinion.
So if I understood the question correctly, how can we avoid our data being sold to the highest bidder? Looking back, I think, again, sort of Facebook being the first company which really began the cloud revolution, they chose to use data in ways which people did not opt into, to sell data. And if you've seen really what's happened in the last 5 years, the companies who were selling data, the Facebooks of the world, the sort of Twitters of the world, they're in more trouble than the companies who were charging for services. Example, Netflix. Example, LinkedIn. Right? So I feel that we're entering a world now where people are starting to sort of care about privacy. And I really subscribe to this model of privacy by design, where you should very, very blatantly ask your customers, being like, I am going to be collecting X, Y, and Z, and here's the reason for it. And what you're going to do is you're going to get about 70% of the people say, yeah, as long as the use case was powerful and compelling, they're going to buy into it and allow you to do that. And then 30% of them, who in hindsight would have made the most noise anyway, are going to say no. And I think that's a win-win for everyone. So I think everyone has the right to opt into data. And I think that should be the model moving forward. That's the model when people who come to us for advice, for help, that's the model which we prescribe. I just think, again, it's the right thing to do. And that's not really insight by me. I think that's just common sense, right?
So if I asked you, it's still your opinion, right? So if I asked you in our highest state, our highest place, right, what would be the connection of humanity and data?
Very difficult to answer that question without being on mushrooms. What is the connection between humanity and data? I really, it's a really difficult question to answer. I think humanity is, can we come back to this question?
Sure. Remember, it's not me asking the questions. They just jump in there and I just speak them out. One thing that I just want to say, what I loved about what Paul said earlier on and a few of the other guys is that, I love the WeWork model from the point of view of community building. And, here we're here at Tropical Nomad Canggu. And one of the reasons why I am here and we're doing SpeakuP Monday as a collaboration between SpeakuP Monday and Tropical Nomad is I love Ichi's vision, and we share the same vision, right, about community and about building something of value for people as a resource for people to move forward with their lives in whichever way is needed. And the co-living model integrates beautifully with that. And again, not realizing who WeWork were, right, I get a little bit, I think I remember what it was about now, but I get why that model could be so successful, right? Because at its core is that, you know what I mean? It's bringing together people of, like a jigsaw puzzle, of this is what I want to create. We bring people together as a jigsaw puzzle who can help us, collaborate with us to start us on the right track and direction towards making these things happen. And these things are, I'm not necessarily, I'm democratic to a certain extent and autocratic to another extent, but, but it's in the interest of the greater number, right, going forward. And that's a decision that people can make that take us in that direction. And I love that. I love that idea about it. And I love the fact that Ichi, and there's a few of us who think the same way. And Bali as a place, which you mentioned before, as being a place which is an incubator for these types of not only ideas, but execution of those ideas, that people actually start to execute these plans and start to make it happen. And hearing from our esteemed guest over here about where Indonesia is going forwards in terms of becoming the most techno-driven economy or populace on Earth by that certain year, 2020 something or 2030, whatever it was, I can see that happening here, and that's part of the excitement that I've got about being in this part of the world, actually, because I see that when you take on a company like Gojek and one of the founders to be in your cabinet to then lead technology and education forward in a massive nation that's got over 300 million people. To me, it's like these guys are on the ball. So I just want to. That's what I was moved to say. So I just thought I'd say it. Yeah. Thank you, brother P. Thank you, my man. Thank you. Now back to you, brother.
I think it's really fascinating, right? I think very bullish on countries, on the introduction of technology in countries like Indonesia and countries like Bali. In countries like India, where you have large populations in very, very dense cities, and how can technology really help over there? I think the first question which comes to my mind is, why is a country of 300 million people or like a billion people trying to take a model which worked for a country which was 5 or 10 times bigger with less population, right? So the WeWork model really made sense, with the idea that you have large enterprises taking big space. Whereas I think over here, the more peer-to-peer, the more individual being able to walk into a space without a contract with a more flexible term, I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think that's why Gojek has been so successful. It's not, it doesn't take much for a new person to sign up on Gojek, whereas in the WeWork traditional model, you are upfront paying for capital, you are upfront using capital, building a space, and then leasing it out. So I think, the idea which you can open space at a much quicker way and not have fixed permanent leases and have people go in and out, and they have access to this space, high quality internet, sort of connection, community, being able to find work. For instance, right now I'm trying to hire a social media person, I'm trying to hire a content writer. I have no idea where to go about it, right? If WeWork existed over here, I could post in the WeWork network and I would find people in that building or in the city or in that country. They would automatically see my message, and I would be able to reach out to them and do business together. So I'm very bullish on those aspects of community in places like this. That's what comes alive for me.
Cool. All right, guys. So now, any more questions anyone has? So Ichi, my brother, we've got a few more questions here. Maybe if you bring the microphone. Just remember the microphone's directional. Woo.
Yeah, I have a question. So you said you think about what kind of data you need to have or to make good decisions. So I wanted to ask you, what kind of data are you personally collecting right now about yourself to make good decision for your personal happiness? I see you have this ring and the watch, but what kind of other sources you are tapping into to make good decisions for your own life?
I see myself as a large experiment with anything I can experiment with. So for when I moved to China, what I started doing was anything in the wellness realm, right? Like acupuncture, I'm going to try it, and floating and massages, and going to the gym and having a trainer, and now doing breath work and sort of stretching and the Healy and all of these devices. And there isn't really a good way right now to take data from all of these different platforms and analyze it in a central way. This was a company which I was planning on building. I've put that on pause to go focus on another project. But I think, again, as I predicted, we're at an inflection point right now where data exists everywhere, and individual tools which are created by one company are no longer that relevant because they only have access to their own data. We're starting to see platforms like Apple Health and Google Fit, which are aggregating data across multiple data sources. I believe the artificial intelligence layer on top of platforms like this is what the next 5 years is going to be about. And that's going to add real value to yourself. How do you augment your data with AI to create value for yourself? So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, understand.
One more question, I think, over here. Yeah. So one more question over here.
Yes, at least from what I've observed, there's a small bunch of companies, usually call them hypergrowth startups, unicorns, or whatever, where everything is very data driven. Like every decision you make depends on how that affects whatever your North Star or your group of metrics that the company decides is important is, right? But equally, I'd say even more so, with so many companies, either small companies or could even be bigger traditional enterprises where they haven't really adopted data as such. What, in your opinion, is the main blocker there? Or
That's a great question. So just to repeat the question was, there's some companies who are extremely good at being data driven, and a lot of startups and other companies really struggle with this. What's the secret sauce? And I touched on this in some way. When you're just getting started, you are heavily dependent on one tool. You're building a business and you're doing a lot of Facebook ads. Makes a lot of sense to go use Facebook's analytical tools. The mistake which a lot of founders make is, once you get to a certain size, let's say $1 million run rate, and now you're at the size where you have where your marketing is dependent on a lot more tools. You have Facebook ads, you have LinkedIn ads, you have affiliate marketing, you have direct referrals, you have all these different types of business. The mistake they make is they still try to use these tools independently to try and get to decisions. And in reality, what happens is they're past that point where they can use those tools effectively. So what companies like Facebook and Instagram and all of these guys are really good at doing is ingesting the data from multiple data sources and then creating a very clean business layer. Again, think back from what are the types of questions you're trying to answer for the business. Map your raw data from these 10 different data sources into that and ask that one data model or that one table all of these questions. What the smaller companies do, what the companies who do it wrong do, is they prematurely try and get insights from the data. They're like, I just want to answer this question of what's my best campaign. And in order to go do that, what they're now doing is they are hacking a lot of the foundational steps. Instead of automating ingesting data from 5 different data sources and then making that clean business model which can answer 80% of those questions, instead of that, they're sort of manually just getting to insights. So over a period of time, when they want to change something or they have new questions, they have to keep repeating this process. So it's very, very slow and inefficient for them to be able to answer questions. And it's like building a skyscraper. They're trying to add stories one by one very, very quickly, instead of spending some time and building the right foundation. And if you spend that time building the right foundation, sort of automating your data ingestion layer, and then creating a data model which can help you answer 80% of your questions, they would be able to scale and grow a lot faster. And this is what the big companies do. This is the model which they follow. And every team inside these big companies have their own data model which can answer 80% of their questions. And that allows them to really understand what's happening in this business and scale and grow faster.
Cool. Yeah. So Ichi, now keep that one in your mind. It's coming. So keep that question there. So could that be remember we said the number one biggest mistake that make with data?
Yeah. So yeah, it's very connected, right? Like, just like at every different phase in your business, you focus on something else, right? When you're just starting out, your goal is to get to 100 sales. And for that, you use friends and family. Next phase is, okay, I want to get to 1,000 people. For that, you use friends and family plus referrals, and you incentivize your friends and family to introduce you to more customers. After that, your goal is to get to 10,000 customers. At that point, it starts making sense to do ads or to do sort of different programs, right? At every phase of your business, you're trying a different strategy. From a data perspective, what helped you get from 0 to 1 million in sales was using somebody else's tools. What's going to help you to get from 1 million to 10 million in sales is having to do this in-house, build that expertise to go build that foundation in-house so that you can answer your questions. That's the second, I think that's the inflection point from a data perspective. And that's the mistake which like 90% of companies are making. Even when they decide to do things in-house, they don't build the right foundations to be able to answer these questions. And instead they jump to insights. How do I get value from this data without spending time building the right foundation? So they're trying to build a skyscraper without actually digging the ground, and which seems they're basically trying to build a skyscraper without building the foundations, and that's the mistake which a lot of companies make when they hit that scale.
Right, thank you. So another question? Yeah.
Yes, question strongly relates to what you said before. I'm currently working for a company, and I want to make it more data driven. So it's a team of 15 to make them more data driven. Collect the data, easy. Analyze it, done. But I think the biggest hurdle is often on leveraging data. So training your people, especially if they're not as analytically background, to actually use that data.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Have you any tips for that?
So I love what you said earlier, which is like sort of collecting data easy, getting insights from data easy. I'll actually challenge the second thing. I'll actually challenge what you said second, which is getting insights from data easy. Yeah, it's easy to get a report from the data, but reports don't mean you're data driven. Just like if you make 2 posts on Instagram, that doesn't mean you're a marketing company. In the same way, having a few dashboards doesn't make you data driven. The way people get value from data is being able to answer questions from themselves. So even if you have a few reports, that's not answering all the questions people have. However, if you've structured your data, if you've ingested it, which you said was a simple step, but then worked backwards and figured out what are all the questions people are trying to answer, and then modeled your data in that format so that now the business can answer 80% of questions and not metrics, that creates a data-driven mindset. So people can be like, oh, I want to know this. I don't have to depend on the data team, which is going to be backlog and take 1 week to go build this report. I can answer this question for myself. And as soon as people feel confident that they can do things for themselves, you've just taught someone how to fish. So that's the foundation of what a data-driven culture really looks like.
Cool. That great question, and I really appreciate it because that's a real life case, right? And part of this whole Speak Up apparatus is about giving real value, right? It's about taking things away where practically you can use it the next day and get value, right? So I really appreciate you being honest and open enough to ask what's truly going on with you. And the beauty about coming down and seeing this live is that then, maybe later on, without twisting his arm too much, you can have a more detailed Q&A with him because he's a beautiful guy. And I'm sure that he'll give you some time, right? So then you actually get to connect. And what I love, it was Denise who was talking about this. Denise was on a couple of weeks ago. One of the things which she loves and I love about SpeakuP Monday is that you get a chance to obviously get some really great value, but it's also about the people that you meet. So the people in the audience, where there's 15, 20, 30, whatever it is, like there's a little community that is created, and the people who come are people who are up to something in life. They're not passengers in life. They're driving their own car in whichever way that they are. And when you're around those kinds of people, it creates magic and it creates outcome and it creates actions, and then actions create results, and results create a level of certainty and trust, and then trust creates, it's this ever increasing circle of benefits, not only to yourself, but the people around you. So that's another great reason to come and see this live, right? Not just to sit and watch it online, which is great, but that's another great reason. Now, another insight which came was, I asked you a question earlier on about how do you see humanity and data. To me, you've been answering that question the whole time. And probably the most key insight that I get out of everything that you've said kind of goes back to, and this is what I love about this show as well, because it really begins to bring back the origin of how we are in the world, right? So very quickly, you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again because why not? It's like the clock, right? So we've got 12 till 12, 12 till 2. This is for everybody, for me, for the guest, for you in the audience, for you watching at home. It's the same. No one escapes this. 12 till 12 is the clock. 12 to 2 is what you know that you know. I know my name, I know where I'm from, I know what language I'm speaking, I know how to speak Italian and not Bahasa real well. But anyway, right, so I've got this is what I know what I know. 2 to 4 is what I know that I don't know. So I know about data, but I know right now I don't possess the real skills to be able to do it really well, right? I know how the rocket goes to the moon, but I don't really know how it works. So this is what I know that I don't know. And then there's the 4 to 12, which is, this is the stuff that I don't know that I don't know. And this is the subconscious patterning that happens between 0 and 7, those formative years, the theta brainwave state. We're a sponge for all these things that our caregivers are intuiting upon us. We don't have anything there to block it. It just comes in. And then we live that out through the RAS, this reticular activating system, this way of attracting, this filtering mechanism that attracts all the things that we already believe to be true. It just backs it up, backs it up, backs it up. And then we go on this line, this train tracks, which is completely unconscious, and we just do it, right? Without even thinking about it. Now, the power of something like this is that it begins to open up other areas that I don't know that I don't know. And then it starts to take us back into that area where there's some true insights, and sometimes it presents itself as a question that we feel we can't answer. Sometimes it presents itself as like something that creates a reaction energetically in your body, but you don't know what it is. And then in the next few days, there's things that then start to appear. So it's like you open a door to a room that you never even knew was there. And in that room are some incredible things. So I appreciate you being part of this and being willing to go along that journey with us. So going back to the humanity thing, like for me, what it is that, you were brought up, or what you took on board for life was you do good things, you get good back. And to me, it's everything. That's everything. Because, as AIs are basically not programs that create themselves, right? It's humans that create the AI, and it's a program. It learns, but it's humans setting up in the first place. So if someone like you is in a position of power to set things up, I believe that the humanity comes through the genetic code, right? Because within you, you've got this understanding of I do good, I get good, I create good, I manufacture. And it's this ever increasing circle. So you will never be part of, voluntarily, anything that's going to create a negative outcome. So to me, that's a true answer behind, or one of the true answers behind the connection of humanity and data. And I'll give you a second to think about that. But I've got one last question here, and you're going to have to help me with this question, mate, because I can't read all the writing. But I've heard Facebook and Instagram way out exist. Help me out now. Okay, so we hear that Facebook and Instagram are going to be gone in 2 or 3 years, or by gone you also mean very much diminished or even replaced by something else. Okay, great question. What do you think?
I don't have a magic ball that I can look in the future. I think any technology which comes is replaced eventually. There's a small company called MySpace which existed before Facebook, and it's very rarely that a company can last 2 generations or 3 generations. So for sure, everyone's talking about TikTok, which is the next thing in social, which works very differently, right? On TikTok, the difference between Instagram is you don't need a large following. On day one, you can have a video which goes viral, which is very different from how Instagram and Facebook work, where the larger the following, the more chances you are of going viral. So for sure, there's going to be, as the world progresses and as information becomes, and as information access becomes, sort of changes fundamentally, there are going to be new paradigms which keep coming and keep going. What really Instagram and Facebook began was this concept of instant gratification, of how do I see something and instantly get a dopamine, I instantly get some dopamine in my head. And I think that concept is going to, just like the way dopamine works, is you keep getting it every time you need more. So the idea that people will get sick of it makes sense, which is why how many people still use Facebook today, right? And 10 years ago, Facebook was everything. So naturally speaking, the sort of macro cycle of that is you are going to get bored of a platform. People are starting to get bored of Instagram, and which is why TikTok is becoming the next thing. And what Facebook's strategy has just been right now is they'll just acquire the next one. So they always have that platform which is attractive on, as part of their control. So I'm not sure if Facebook and Instagram will be around, if they're going to acquire the next company and try and integrate that, and that might be their sort of business strategy. But I know just from a humanity point of view that whatever it is, people are going to get bored of it. So there is going to be a paradigm shift.
Thank you, my brother. So look, we're going to begin to wrap up now. So in a minute or so, I'm going to let you have the closing. So what that means is that, anything that maybe pops into your head, right? Something that you maybe just want to say. It's not a question. It can be a question if you want, but just an observation, something that comes up within you that you feel is a good place to leave it. Okay. So before we do that, I just want to thank everybody in the audience. I would get you to scream, but I think we're in a really cool space. Maybe clap. There you have a clap. There you go. You can clap. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I love the energy you have, man. I just really want to thank you for being open and honest, right? And just being you, right? And that question about, again, the questions don't come from me, guys. The questions come from somewhere else, and I just speak them out. But I love your humanity, actually, and I love the way that you've come from India, and and for whichever reason you've been led on this path, and now you're connecting the two, humanity and data, or humanity and technology, and I love that about you, man. And I feel in very safe hands with you, right? If you're going where I believe you are going, because you're already there. Thank you, my man. So I appreciate that about you big time. And thanks as well for just being, like if you don't know the answer, you say, you know what, I don't know the answer. I love that. Just honesty, man. I love it. So look, for those of you here, next week, we're going to dive deeper. So we start with two really impressive people. One is Tara Kandro, and the other one is Philip Gusted. And these guys are, look, for me, I believe we're spiritual beings having a human existence, not human beings having the occasional spiritual existence, and I believe you get the same thing. So next week, we're going to dive a bit deeper into that way of looking. So for the next 2 weeks, it's going to be around that kind of area. So that would be pretty cool. Now, for those of you at home who are watching this, or those of you here, just want to thank you huge for tuning in, for spending some time with us. Always really appreciated. And please share this, right? So this is organic, right? We don't pay for ads. We don't do any of that. We keep it organic. We keep it real. This is number 74, and we're going to keep on doing these, right? Every Monday here at Tropical Nomad, 7 p.m. Come 6:30 if you can, all right? So share it on social media, YouTube, whatever it is, because if you're feeling it, share it, right? This is where the power really kind of comes into this. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Now, as I said before, thank you to Tropical Nomad, to Brother Itchy over there, Sister Bella. Thank you so much. And look, earlier on when I said I love Itchy for what he's doing, there's also George at Genesis, another great guy, Adrian Tropicola, another great guy. There's people here who are doing amazing things, who see this in a similar way, and we're reaching out, and there's going to be something created in the future that involves some really impactful people that share the same set of values and contribution aspect, right? And we'll be releasing more about that as we go down that road. So for now, I'm going to hand it back to my brother Tarush Aggarwal to wrap us up. Thank you so much. Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. This is so good to be over here, and yeah, it's been a while since I've been behind the camera. It feels really good to be back. So yeah, thank you guys so much for for all the questions, and that really gives me an opportunity to really think about what are my views on these topics. For anyone interested in if anyone's at that point in their company where they're moving from sort of using tools to the next level, where you want to start doing things in-house, this is really what I'm very excited about. And we've built a 12-week program teach companies how to go build the right foundations to go scale to the next phase. So if anyone's at that point and interested in chatting more, would sort of love to connect. But even if you have any other questions or if there's any way I can add value, sort of please come to me. Very, very happy to help. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, brother. Oh, man. And man, what's the name? Come on, man. Give us the name.
Name of what?
The 12-week program.
So the name of the company is called 5x Data. I read this book by Robin Sharma called the 5 a.m. Club. And when I moved to China, that was the first thing which I changed in my life, as I started waking up at 5 a.m. And I got really behind some of Robin Sharma's philosophy. And he speaks about this concept of exponential value, right? When you're trying to do something, the only standard word aspiring to is BIW, which is best in world. And best in world means you can add exponential value. So what 5x Data stands for is we're trying to add $1 billion of value for anyone we want to work with. We're trying to add exponential value. So the name of the company is called 5x Data, and we're very excited about this 12-week data mastery program with the goal of enabling companies to scale their business and unlock hidden monetization opportunities through being data driven.
Wonderful. Thank you, man. Great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you.